Hello, it's Brad Laurie, your Blockchain Brad, and today an update, especially for you from the CEO of Band Protocol. His name is Soravis, and he's here to give us all the information, all the goss, everything that's going on with Band as they move in the direction of decentralized oracles. Soravis, thank you very much for making time.
Yeah, Brad, thanks a lot for having me.
No worries, mate. Now, for all those wondering, I'm a bit of a sort of a broken record, but it is entirely free and it is super important. People do know that this is genuinely about providing information and education from the source, not me. And that's obviously, very much thanks to the CEO today. Now, Band, I wanted to talk to you, Soravis, more about this because we've seen the success of Chainlink in many different, ways we can talk about success, whether that be from a technology standpoint, from attention, from success of their token. It's, multifaceted. But you're in a different situation. Your technology is slightly different, and you represent something, that is all about utility, an absolute need between, as a bridge or a conduit between data and, applications of the new era. So talk us through essentially what it means to have this layer 2 solution, why we really do need Band Protocol.
Sure. I mean, if we go to the fundamental, right, why we need Band Protocol, or why do we need Oracle solution, right, which is what we are. Most people may not understand it's an Oracle. What Oracle is essentially a service that connect real world data to smart contract, right? Think of it this way, right? Smart contract is not really smart. It's actually pretty dumb, right? Smart contract is a piece of code that lives on Ethereum, right? It's able to execute by itself, but it has no way to know what is going on in the real world. It's a black box, right? The easiest example people can relate to is, for example, you and me can write a piece of code that say, hey, if Chelsea win, transfer my money to Brad. If not, transfer your money to me, right? Sounds very cool. Get rid of casinos, no middleman, right? Problem is, as a code, how do you know if Chelsea win, right? It doesn't know, right? So somebody have to tell them that if Chelsea win or not. That's the job of an Oracle, right? And that's what we do. And it's not just applied to, let's say, in this case, betting app, right? In the case of, let's say, real world example that people use right now, Maker Dai, for example, use price Oracle in order to determine, what's the price of Ethereum right now. Why is that important? Because if the price of Ethereum fell, significantly, then they have to liquidate that position, right, to cover the debt position that they have, right? And that's really important because if the information is wrong, right, if the Oracle is compromised, then it has a potential to basically collapse the whole system. It can force liquidate everyone. And that is a real risk for many people in the industry right now that they're not fully aware of, right?
Right.
I recently spoke about that as well. So.
Exactly, mate. And, you mentioned Dai as well, and we've seen Maker, obviously come out with some serious force, as a digital asset. And then we see Compound. Now, one of the things you've even referenced in the past is that they've looked into and created their own Oracle solution for their own, unique network. So in that respect, when we go to the more macro level, why Band? Why do we need to have this decentralized Oracle when we see even today infrastructural technologies are still very prominent? They're still the force to be reckoned with when it comes to experimentation to see if any of these will make it. And the reason I ask is because you always talk about the imperative of utility. To really, mean something as a protocol, you have to have real use case and real tech that is seamless and easy, fun, engaging, and purposeful. So right now, we see the majority of time and attention still in that infra, as they call it. Have they got it wrong? Should it be more about these applications? And should it, in fact, be about these oracles making it possible to accelerate blockchain?
Well, I mean, if you think about current adoption, right, and you think about this industry trajectory as a whole, as you can see, a lot of the traction are getting, in the DeFi space, right? That's why you hear a lot about this buzzword, decentralized finance, right? And to be frank, right now, we're not even there. We're not even close to mass adoption, right? And the people who participate in the system right now are, I guess, they are okay with the risk that associated with, using this new technology. Right. But if we are to cross the threshold from being here in a very small sphere to mass adoptions, you need to make sure the system is 100% tight. You need to make sure everyone fully understand what they get themselves into, right? And eventually, yes, right now the emphasis is on the infrastructures, But we see a lot of shift, a lot of attention shift into, like you said, application layers, into the securities layers and all that stuff, right? Which Oracle is part of that, right?
Mm.
If you're not able to create a fully decentralized Oracle, and I mean fully decentralized, right? Then it's going to be really difficult to build a truly trusted app. Right now, you're using Maker, you trust in Oracle, in the Maker team, right? You're using Compound, you trust Compound, which is fine for some of the users. But if we are to cross the bridge, we are to cross to more mass adoption, I think eventually all these services, we need to look for ways to decentralize some of these components, right? To make sure they are safe and secure as much as possible. And that's why when I say, people talk to us about Chainlink, talk about other solutions. It's fine, there should be multiple solutions, and projects should use multiple solutions to make sure they are 100% bulletproof. Because if they're not, if they rely on only one solution, then think of that as an airplane. Right? If one engine fail, airplane's still flying, and then you can land safely. That's fine.
Totally agree.
Right?
Exactly, and you're an agnostic protocol, so you're not conditioned by your connections with Ethereum, for example. The potential for you to really align with several blockchains is already, I imagine, on the cards or on the table, and you want to eventually move to your own blockchain, as I understand, in the future. But if we look at just now in 2019, we don't have enough people, I think, in the media frontline really getting real with people like you, to be frank. The reality is we don't have a lot of empirical evidence of applications. You've already had some product success now. Can you talk us through more of this idea, though, Soravis? Proof in real utility, the plan for your protocol to really emerge as something of a force, and where that's meant to start. Is the plan to really showcase your strengths in Asia, where much of your team are, or what exactly is the roadmap plan?
Yeah, so roadmap plan, right? I think as we separate this into two-prong approach, right? One is working on integrating with existing projects and solutions, right? As well as basically you can think of it as a crypto sphere, right? So we work with multiple projects, up and coming, as well as the existing project in terms of integrating a solution, make sure their projects are more secure, make sure it's easier for people to build a competing product, right? If you want to make let's say a competing Maker Dai project, now it's really easy because all the infrastructures are ready. Okay? You just have to worry about go-to-market, worry about customer acquisitions, which is good. That's what they should be focusing on, right? So on one approach. The other approach, which is quite interesting as well, is we're working more with enterprises. So as you know, a lot of the companies right now are experimenting with the proof of concept using smart contract to automate some of the processes, right? If this happen, then do this, right? We are planning to work with many of these existing enterprises, act as a bridge, right, between the real world data from the API or from their whatever data that they receive, put that into the blockchain as an input, to automate the smart contract, automate that process, split out the result. Then that result get feedback into the real world, right? And we act as that bridge, right? And you think about that, for example, in trade finance, we are working with some companies where, if let's say company A send an invoice to company B, this invoice information got relayed into blockchain. Smart contract automatically, let's say, issue certificate, automatically issue payment. Then we trigger the payment from bank B to bank A, for example, right?
Right.
So if you think about that, then that make smart contract much more powerful, make it much more useful, right? Because then that interact with the real world. Whereas
Exactly.
right, it's really difficult.
It's almost, mate, like you're giving the smart contract some legitimacy and also giving it the green light when it comes to real world business, real world applications, real world data, most importantly, as you've always said, because essentially there was that challenge of not having a decentralized oracle in this instance for that smart contract. Now, in the sort of scope of crypto, how many are authentically decentralized oracles outside the scope of your protocol?
How many are there? Well, I mean, there are a few attempts. Obviously, Chainlink has been dominating. They've been here for a few years, right? Pioneering the field. There's Taylor, there's Witness, there's a couple of many Oracle solutions that people are trying to come up with. Partly again because one is a difficult problem to get it fully decentralized. Two, it's a really important problem that need to be solved in the industry.
Right. Okay.
Let's crack it yet. So
sure. And I don't want to waste too much time, trying to shill any of those projects or even mention them too much, because obviously I would love to talk to those projects separately. But in your instance, what sets you apart? Because you've always made it clear that there are certain value propositions that Band offer, even beyond Chainlink, for example. And right now, Soravis, we see a vastly different market cap between Band and Chainlink for for a few reasons. One of them is that Chainlink's existed for some years now and has a lot of backers in the US and a very significant aggressive marketing strategy too. But behind this, let's just talk about the tech. What really makes Band stand out, despite not being that known yet?
Right. I would say that obviously there are many differences when it comes to using our solution compared to others, developers like that, right? But I think fundamentally the big difference is on the staking model, right, or the token model, I would say, right? Because ultimately, if you think about all this Oracle, right, somebody have to bring information from outside to the smart contract. You can't avoid that. To make it decentralized, you need many people to do that, right, and help verify each other. Now, that's a no-brainer. Everyone is trying to do the same thing, right? But how do you make sure the data is secure? How do you make sure the token actually have values and value accrue to the token itself? I think that's something that we spend a lot of time trying to crack, trying to make sure that if there are adoptions and they're using this, the value actually accrue to the network, actually accrue to the tokens, right? In our cases, we are probably the only one right now where you can use the tokens, stake it, on behalf of data providers or stake as a data providers, and earn the money from the token, from the the query fee, right? The fee generated from people using the data itself. Is a working protocol, is functioning, and fundamentally at that level is fully decentralized, right? And that's something that really I think we are trying to put more emphasis on. Sure, most people still don't care about decentralization, but it's really important to have working staking model, because if you don't have a staking model, right? I'm sure you heard about this, token velocity problem. You heard about this evaluation problems, right? If you only use it as a payment, it doesn't make any sense for the web.
Actually, in many respects, I've even mentioned this to some CEOs. It almost comes across as a robbery. If it's just solely for payment and they're taking it as an ICO or an IEO or any kind of fundraising means, they essentially are taking money from one source and then spending it, to grow their equity or grow their business, which may not even correlate. So what you're saying resonates with a lot of us, because not just with token velocity, but with genuine correlation between that unit of value, that token representation, and your growing business model and your growing platform itself and your protocol. They all need to correlate longitudinally, and you're making it clear that that's on your agenda. Now, if you obviously we'll talk about the bonding curve a little bit later, because I want to understand a bit more about that. But in terms of the applications, how are you going with products, for example, and developing more of those use cases that essentially work directly with the value of the token?
Sure. Well, I mean, for us, it's really clear, right? If we drive more number of transactions of this query, like people query more of us, there'll be more fee generated in the system. This go back to the staker, people who stake in the network, right? And that essentially gives the value to the tokens, right? Because think of it almost like a dividend, right? If you hold some sort of tokens or you do some work, you get paid for that proportionate to the amount of tokens you have. Then essentially, then you can value almost like a dividend that being paid to the stock, right?
Right. Well, you're essentially a utility actor in that sense, because you're helping secure the network and doing something of real value. So that's where it isn't a security.
Some work in order to get that, right? So that's the difference between that's what people call a work token, meaning you hold the token, you do some work, and then you earn the money. Right?
Yep.
As opposed to a securities, which is like, hey, I'm just going to sit here, have my tokens, and earn some money.
Right? Got it. So do you think, Soravis, in that instance, this is the solution to garner the support, that imperative community building that every new startup in this sort of crypto and blockchain arena needs, because only those with strong communities actually make it through?
Agreed.
So is that the key for you right now, is to really show that you have this sort of synergy between a staking sound token model and real technology and products?
Right. I agree. So I think it depends on how you look at it and how you prioritize it, right? Some projects build community first and then say, okay, now we introduce staking, right? Some like us, we say, hey, we optimize the technology now. We have staking, we have everything working. Now let's build that communities and let's try to get more people to understand, use our product, drive adoption, right? It's
Right.
fundamentally we have the same goal. Is how you prioritize it. Now, obviously, with the current market condition, it's obviously more challenging compared to different time. As you know, being in the industry, timing is important. Almost more than anything else, right? In terms of getting it right, and it's also a function of how long you're in the market for. So if I mean, we're only 2 months old. We only started to get out there. So there's a lot of room for us to build that. Sure, it will not be as fast as most people think, but that's okay because we want a solid communities. We want real people who understand, use our solution, not speculators. And luckily, I think most of that left industry as well because of this boom and bust cycle, right?
Right. Well, let's talk about this. This is so fascinating you're saying this, because I wonder if that's what Sergey would say from Chainlink now that he's gone through the process of being, the CEO of a company that has had a token that no doubt has been pumped. Whether he, wants to say that directly, it has. He has a very strong and aggressive, media strategy, whether that be directly from Chainlink. But certainly it's very organized to make sure that people globally become aware of the technological plan and value of Chainlink. So the outcome of that was that a lot of people, flooded in to support that token. The question though is that going to be sustained? Whether that be, Chainlink or any other token that we see play out, there's a propensity for a more of a short-term play for many. Riding on the backs of narratives to try and maximize profits. But I do worry, about the integrity of upholding the integrity of Sergey or any of these tech teams, including yourselves.
I mean, look. I don't think I am in a position to comment about competitors or comment about Chainlink. Obviously, I don't know that well in terms of that. What I would say though is that obviously communities is important. They have been really successful in terms of building that. And in order for you to do that, you need to have good technologies. You need to have, like you said, narrative or whatnot, right? To do that. So I think ultimately, can they sustain it if they have good technology? It can drive adoption, sure. Just like Ethereum, just like that. Right? They have a floor level of billions of dollars right now, right? So we'll see. I mean. Things take time, and I do believe that at least in the Oracle space, this will be billions of dollars in the future, right? People who build Oracle in the next few years has a potential to be in the level of top 5, top 10 coin for sure. So whether that be Chainlink, that be us, or is part of anyone that's working on Oracle, I wouldn't be surprised. Let me put it that.
Well, I would tend to agree in every way because obviously there's the real demand. We've seen the evidence from Chainlink already in terms of the amount of attention that it's garnered. But once again, looking at the state of crypto in the last few years, those that just solely and wholly focus on tech, they don't tend to really excite the masses because obviously the agenda's still in this very nascent and green time in crypto. Many of them are following the short-term gains, just irrespective of your technological future. So I don't discount the importance of the narrative of the community building. So getting back to you, what is your strategy to synergize the evolution of your tech to really make sure that there's not just that attention on the applications and the technology in concert with each other, but also that other very imperative part, which is growing the community base?
Sure. So I mean, if you think about marketing, right? People like to say, "Hey, do more marketing. You should do marketing and all that," right? I think it's a really weird word, right? When you think of marketing, I think there are a couple of things, right? One is obviously, you're keeping your community engaged, meaning keep putting up updates, keep putting, be present on the social media and all that, right? We have been doing that. Admittedly, we should be able to do more, and we will do more in the future for sure, right? We're just working on that right strategies, but yes, we'll do that more. So that's internal update, right? Keeping community engaged, right? Two is basically updating the wider communities, right? So getting the word out there for other people, and that includes PR, that includes releasing the top media publications. We have been doing that as well. When we launched our MainNet, we are on Coindesk on all the major publications, right? Coindesk, Grab, Block, you name it, right? All major publications. Now, you have to understand that, again, in the current state of the industry, most people are desensitized about news. Most people don't even consume news as much anymore, right? Even for myself, right? I used to read, I used to spend hours reading news, right? And I'm not doing that much anymore, even for myself, right? So you have to understand the attention and the cycle does go that we keep doing it is fine, but it's nothing. And then okay, and the third part, let me finish this first. The third part then is the offline event, right, where we host some meetup, where we actually go present and all that stuff, which we are doing, right? I was just at the Binance meetup in Singapore. We were at DevCon. Our CTO was presenting there, right? So there are, we're building that person in the communities, but you need to understand that in the short terms, nothing will move the needle. Nothing will move the needle unless you are trying to do something like Ponzi scheme or you work with, I don't know, all those shady practices, right? Which we don't.
And Soravis, I really appreciate that you're saying that, because we're seeing more and more of that play out. Exactly what you're saying. I would imagine this will be even more true of next year and the year after. But the reality is, up to this time, we see things like the reliance on superficial media. Articles that really are just designed to pump, and there's often it's very organized. So whether that be, the previously discussed Oracle or any others, I'm not trying to suggest anything more than the truth. And the truth is that, there's very organized strategies to really get the attention from the crypto community and outside of it as much as possible, because obviously it's in the interest of all of these, because they're vying for attention for their startup to, get more support. Now, in Chainlink's example, again, just as because we're talking about oracles between you and them, the reality is that price doesn't always reflect tech, whether it's in crypto or in any startup outside of that. And the challenge will be, once again, for all startups, including those representing oracles, is to be real value, to be real utility, and priced in at that. So what you're suggesting, it sounds like, is it has to now shift. The narrative has to change, because we no longer have the kind of crazy swings in the market, the crazy liquidity. It has to be about that token has real value. So do you think this is going to change the landscape entirely for next year?
Yeah, for sure. I think people are becoming more sophisticated, right? And people are discerning the quality of the tokens differently now, which is good. And like you said, it's not like the old days where everything pumped. And when I say nothing moved the needle in the short term, I think it's a good thing. Why? Again, how do people make money? Again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not going to advise this, but I'm going to talk about the stock market, for example.
Sure.
Right? You talk about the stock market. As a good investor, what do? You're not saying you're going to find good companies, because sometimes good companies are overvalued and you don't even want to buy their stock, even if they're good, right? You want to find a company that is undervalued, and that means that the price of the stock is cheaper than the actual valuation, right? Because once people more and more discover that, then the price will go up, right? In the long term, price will move to the fundamental value, right? Enough. And that's why, as a good investor in the stock market, you find a company that is undervalued, you buy it. For the company that is overvalued, you sell, right?
Exactly.
It doesn't matter if it's good, no matter if it's bad. If it's undervalued, you buy. If it's overvalued, you sell.
And we can liken that idea into the pre-utility spec bet. That's what I always refer to when I explain, like me, for example, if I've invested in a startup, I always consider that a high risk, because it is a pre-utility investment in belief that they're going to emerge with strength of utility. Now, obviously that's a super high risky decision, because that utility is not designed ever to be an investment. So once again, the beauty of the blockchain means that we now have token modeling that if taken up, if it's successful, and if you have more applications, that's when that value can actually exist, can be supported by the CFTC and the SEC for what it is, which is not a security, by new design. The question will be, though, what comes of BAN protocol in terms of increasing products and applications because of the open source nature. So are there other parties outside of your team? Because you have the skill sets, we've seen your creds, and they're strong, coming from Stanford, from the engineering background, and many of your team we talked about in the past. But are there people outside of BAN protocol who are also starting to experiment with the protocol, so that they're also, building, outside of the team?
Right. So I would say this, right? There is a bit of a confidentiality, but obviously we are working to improve utilities and use cases for Ben Protocol. So not just existing projects that are trying to integrate with us, but that also include, like you said, new project, new developers who want to build, let's say, the new lending platform, or they want to build the new stable coin or the new synthetic tokens that are working with us external to the team, and we are providing assistance to them in terms of the integration effort and all that. So yes, we are working on that. Will they be successful? I don't know. We are providing the help as an infrastructure layer, right, to them. The more, the better. The more competition, the better for the space, and that's what we've been trying to
Exactly. And I like that you're agnostic. You don't necessarily have input in terms of vetting. I would imagine some of these who want to trial your Oracle, but that's the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a case of onboarding those who want to experiment with your technology. Now, I want to talk a bit more about Thailand. When we spoke last, I was still trying to understand the geography of the team for the most part. Obviously, because your training, your education is for the most part in the US. You have a master's degree from there, Stanford. Big skill sets when it comes to all, the likes of some of your team when we compare them to Vitalik even.
Right.
So why Thailand when it's relatively unknown in the context? Why not assert more of dominance in the US, especially in Silicon Valley where you worked?
I think actually, you see more and more people moving from the Silicon Valley, if you're in a crypto space, to the other part of the world, actually, because of the regulation, right? Clearly, in the US, your hands are quite tight in terms of what you can do, what you cannot do. The amount of innovation, the amount of things that you can push are much, much limited, right, by the SEC. Whereas in Thailand, for example, regulatory landscape is really friendly. And I can tell you, we're working with almost really big banks here, and many corporates here who are really open to the ideas of testing, the ideas of using blockchain as smart contract in their companies, right? Whereas in the US, most of them are like, hey, either we're gonna do it themselves, we are scared of SEC. I mean, take Facebook for example, right? Mark Zuckerberg can't even pass a Congress. Not to say they have cryptocurrencies, but I'm just saying, innovation got stifled, right? So, I think it's actually had an advantage. And actually, in Thailand, you actually see some companies here, like Omiseco is based in Thailand, right? Loom Network is based in Thailand, right? Sequoia, so a couple of like, top 100 coins are here. A lot of the developers are here, partly because cheap living costs, right? So we have a really low burn rate to survive the bear market. We are focusing on technologies, so we have enough to, comfortable runway for the market cycle to wear it out, right? So actually, there's a lot of advantage here. Not to mention, obviously, the food and everything else. Like, people are quite happy here.
Right.
That's the thing. Yeah.
So I shouldn't be worried because that's what I wanted to understand is were you disadvantaged by being in that region when a lot of your experience, a lot of your knowledge, and your training came from essentially Silicon Valley. And the other reason I ask is because of Chainlink is just one example, but also the increasing success of startups in that region, and also the VCs and the exchanges. They all seem to be supporting each other in many respects to uplift the future of blockchain and applications, more importantly for use case. So are you able to break into that market as well? Just, despite that, you're in a region for the reasons you explained that is very progressive and very much centered on building.
Yes, Chainlink, I guess not like to talk about it much, but Chainlink has really strong brand in the US, in Europe, right? For sure. We are focusing on different market. I mean, for us, we're in Asia. We are pretty much have a lot of activities in China, a lot of activities in Korea, a lot of activity in Vietnam, and now we are trying to do more in India as well. So a couple of these key countries. And then when you look at the number of population, you look at the regulatory landscape, we're actually getting much more open here. So we are getting there. We are trying to focus on really different segments, both in terms of project, communities. So it's really different, right? And that's why look at us, the English speaking communities for us may be smaller compared to other projects, but we actually do have quite big Chinese communities, Korean communities, Vietnamese communities that follow us closely.
I see. Well, hopefully we see, an increasing balance of the East and West in terms of
Even then,
attention, understanding. That's partly what I'm trying to help you with as well. So you are known, in other
right,
regions perhaps. But let's talk about China for a second, because you would be following, I'm sure, their pro-blockchain stance, their
right.
opening up of blockchain, not necessarily of crypto though. Let's be
Mhm.
real. There's still a lot of questions about whether they'll accept crypto or tokenized models at all. They're not necessarily a huge fan. Now, how does that relate to you when you are focused on enterprise as one of the plans for the future, in terms of revenue?
Sure. So, I mean, yes, if you follow the news, the president, she has been quite open, right, about like, blockchain technologies. We're going to be doubling down on that effort, right? Obviously, they will come up with their own solution and all that, which is good for the industry. It gives legitimacy, right? On the other hand, if you follow recent news, they also say, hey, we're going to crack down on more crypto businesses,
Yeah.
which is a bit funny. But I mean, rightly so. I mean, you look at the Chinese landscape, a lot of the tokens are clear like Ponzi scheme, right? They are clear, not even close to the cheap coin and the bad coin that we see in the market, right? It's scheme, right? And it's a good thing. I mean, and they're cracking a lot of that down with the local Chinese projects, right? Whereas for us, we are more international. Obviously, we are international project entering the space. We are not doing a token sales. We are driving adoption. We are going to developers. We're talking to enterprises. That is fine. I mean, that they actually have a friendly regulatory stand, and I would say that actually benefit us as an international companies that try to do more business in China. Yeah, they welcome that as long as obviously you don't do sketchy things. You don't do shady
Yeah,
practice.
yeah, I appreciate that. So what's in the pipeline for China for you? Can you tell us anything about planning as a CEO with some of the prospective, I guess, business deals you might be making?
As you know, right, I would say the East, always, the East and West, this thing, we always lag behind the US, I would say, in terms of innovation. That's for sure. If you look at DeFi, it originated from the US, right? This Maker Dai, Compound, Synthetic is in Australia, but, mostly they're from the US, right? And China is always 6 months, 12 months behind in terms of, hey, moving, or not just China, sorry, Asia, right? 6 months, 12 months, just imagine the 2017, right? Layer one protocol. After Ethereum and all those, layer one, then you have EOS from China, you have Icon from Korea, Tomotion from Vietnam, right? It moved that, right? But it takes 6 to 12 months.
Right.
That's what we're saying. That's what we're saying. DeFi has been there for 1 year. Now we're seeing more of that in China, people talking about that in Korea, right? So we are working with some of those projects who are in this nascent market and try to bring more adoption. And we are quite bullish, just again, if it adoption, like Chinese market is really big and they are really open to innovation. And that's our focus that what we're doing right now. We've been pushing, and then you will hear a lot more from China from us with a lot of projects in the private level that want to experiment with this. So
I see. So do you think that DeFi is something that will really expand in this Asian region where you're situated? I ask you this because one of the things you did say, which is, I think, spot on, is that even though the DeFi movement did originate from, the West, especially the US, one of the concerns I think many of the parties have now who are representing that industry and working as CEOs perhaps, is that there is a bit of a lag for regulatory support, especially when in the context of DeFi, because some of the issues are even all the way down to classifications of different digital assets. Whereas if you see the context in Asia, we tend to see more of a progressive stance in terms of building blockchain. So, what are your thoughts on the growth and the prospects of DeFi in Asia?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, again, just the number of population alone outnumber US and Europe, right? Just the amount of people that are interested in blockchain, the people that are, I guess, where the money is, actually Asia is where to be, right? If you look at the funds and all that, Chinese VC fund are still quite dominating in the crypto space as well. So I mean, for me, again, I'm quite bullish, just both in terms of sheer number of population, the amount of money. And then if you think about DeFi, right, all the lending right now, because I think it's quite synonymous because most of them are DeFi.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because recently you partnered with a lending institute, as I understand. Or talk us through a few more of these DeFi related partnerships you either have now or you plan to have in the future. Even if you can't name them, give us a bit of a sense of some of the real world planning that you're making.
Sure. So I mean, a couple of things, right? Obviously, lending, as I said, lending or stable coin are a clear use case of price oracle. They need a price of crypto asset in real time in order to not compromise the system, right? How do we provide a cheap, fast, and secure option for them? That's the key. That's what we're doing. Synthetic tokens, really interesting. Obviously the only one right now is synthetic project. UMA is trying to work on it. We are trying to work with some projects. Really interesting use case. How can we create a tokens that mirror real world asset, whether that be stock, commodities, derivative, or even some other crypto asset, right? Stablecoin, right? For example, really interesting use case. Real adoption are coming on that scene. Most people cannot build it right now because of the price oracle problem as well. And that's why we see synthetic hack as well with the recent oracle attack. A lot of people try to crack that. We are really bullish on this use case. You will see much more on this, including some of the product that we're working with some of the projects. Really interesting. So that's on the synthetics. The other one is on the, I would say, I group it under trading, I would say. So something like, set protocol where, there are more and more projects trying to do something like set protocol where, you basically get people to invest in a basket of assets, right? Based on trading strategies. And those trading strategies depend on external data. So for example, if you want to create a basket of 30% Ethereum, 70% BTC, then you have to rebalance every single day, right? Or whatever time, right? You need to know price of that asset. Or, buy and sell based on, say, some technical indicators, right? 30-day moving average, for example. Things like that, really difficult to compute on chain. So you may have to rely on, let's say, an oracle, outside oracle to feed you that. Right. So that's a couple of buckets that we're working on. And I guess the other one that I would touch a little bit more on is on the, I would say, betting apps. Right? I mean, you see a lot more of that in China. And that's
certainly with Tron.
Certainly with Tron, right? Yeah, it's a valid use case. I mean, again, it's a valid use case, right? But you need random number generators, truly random number generators in order to get a fully decentralized system, right? Or spot betting, you need a spot result, as I mentioned before. So those are the things we are trying to bring to life, and then hopefully obviously things take time. In not just in this industry, is a realistic assumption, right? I mean, you are trying to create a business you have infrastructures, you have a business that try to use your infrastructures. To create that business, it takes time, right? To create adoption, it takes time, right? But we are working toward that, and we have a clear roadmap to hit that.
Yes. Well, that was a lot of information, with regard to you trying to disclose some of the things that are coming, but you didn't, you tend to be quite safe. Let's be real about what you're actually not able to say with NDAs. But can we be assured that you do have, strong partnerships coming or strong alliances with various parties who really do want to utilize your technology to produce something that is of value, because I just don't want to, suggest that it's just about gaming either. Sorry, about the speculative sort of literal bet when it comes to casinos, sort of style gaming, as you referenced. But beyond that, because a lot of people have criticized the reliance on that application and not expanding to more robust applications. So are you really going to push for be more than that as well?
Yeah, well, ultimately for us, it's about, I don't know how I can say this in the same way. Again, this is not an investment, right? For us, we are trying to drive that usages on the demand side, right? As I just lay out, right? On the supply side, yes, we are working with some of the data providers. As you hear from us, we have a couple of data providers now. We are working to onboard more people. We are working, actually, you will hear from us today as well. And with more, example use cases, right? And there's nothing much for me to say, hey, I can assure you all the partnership.
Well, we just want to make sure that you're really touching on all the verticals as well, not just,
Again, for me, ultimately, it's about usage. So
yes,
if people understand and use it, then, all is good. It will take some time, but it will happen. Right?
Absolutely. Now, Polkadot, Cosmos, Nia, several other, up and coming, really strong infrastructural layer one solutions and technologies. You've mentioned them in the past, some of them. what's the future for integration beyond Ethereum?
Oh, I can tell you that we have been making really good progress with all this chain that you mentioned in terms of both technical, business, partnership, and all that. So yes, we are working on that. We actually have a working solution now with the partnership that we announced. So if you remember, we do announce some of the layer one partnership like Elron, Tomo Chain, One Chain. All that we have a live working code that able to port out data from Ethereum to other chain. And it's really easy work to do that for most of the other partnership that we do. So again, we do not announce for a sake of announcement. Right?
Okay.
We announce and we work on that, and we actually work on that before we announce. That's generally the direction that we're moving, and the industry is moving away, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously you're very clear on making legit announcements when they're real. So I respect that. Now, with regard to the token, it's a tough talk for a moment. You may not like this one, so have a drink. But with regard to the market cap, we've seen a scenario play out. Since you listed, it essentially declined in value. Mm-hmm. So your market cap at some point, was quite reasonably, sound and of significant value. But today we see roughly about a 3.7 mil cap. 24-hour volume is about 831,000. So that's quite substantial compared to its cap. And then your circ supply, about 15 mil total supply, 100 mil. Now, price-wise, September 22 roughly, about 80 cents USD. Today, very different story, minus 4x at 2024 roughly. So I wanted to talk to you frankly about this because I'm trying to understand for the community why there's this decline happening when you've had the support from Binance as a legitimate partnership. You've been building, your tech's going well. What's going on? Why does this flux in volatility and price happen so much?
Well, again, look, number one disclaimer, I cannot comment on the token price.
But just generally trying to understand.
But I can talk about the industry, right? I mean, again, look, we are not alone. I would say that we are not alone, right? It's really easy. Obviously, yes, there are some certain exceptions. I would say less than 1% of the tokens are exception, but we are under 99% of the tokens, which is okay, including Bitcoin, right? So, I mean, look, the nature of this industry is speculative. There is, a cycle. We are unfortunately in a bear market, in one of the worst bear market in the history. And obviously that affects us, right? It's just like any other tokens, right? If people sell BTC, BTC go down, right? And that affects our value as well, right? When there is a panic sell happening in the entire industry, obviously they sell across all the holding that include all the token that they hold, right? So that's just the nature of it, right? I mean, I cannot comment on price, but I mean, it's really simple. Ultimately, why price go down, there are more seller than buyer, right? And that's just true for the entire industry, right? There's just more seller than buyer, and that's it, right? Why do price go up? There are more buyer than seller, and that's just really simple equation, right? Unfortunately, in this industry right now, we're in a bear market. Most people are losing faith. Some people are, going to despair more, like, hey, blockchain has no future, token has no value. Hey, I mean, I heard many of this before. It's just the nature of the cycle.
Right. Well, we certainly see more playing out though than that Soravis at the moment. There's a lot of suggestions about manipulation, a lot of the inner, I guess, manipulating the inner workings and mechanics perhaps sometimes of the outcome of tokens. I mean, there's a lot going on that we perhaps don't always know. But I did want to ask you more specifically about Binance. I hope that's okay. Because recently we saw, quite a lot of information, suggestions, innuendo, FUD. It really depends on, if we look at the sources and understand and unpack what they're actually saying. But really, you have a direct, association with Binance. What is your sentiment? How are you feeling about that, given some of these things that are coming out on the media now? I know it's a tough question.
Right. Disclaimer, I own BNB.
Okay.
So, that might answer you. I'm really bullish on Binance. I mean, for me, they are number one exchange. They are number one ecosystem players. Their new future launch is doing really, really well, extremely well. They are they're doing a lot of due diligence for their tokens listing. They do a lot of work when it comes to marketing, listing, and expanding their product, like lending, staking, launchpad, all that, right? I mean, for me, I'm quite bullish. They are doing incredibly well even in this market. They will do even better in the bull run.
Okay. So what does it mean for you to be a partner with them? What does Binance do for you?
I would say that obviously there are things that we are, or how do you say it? Obviously, as an ecosystem players, they also help many projects, right? Not just listing, but hey, let's talk about partnership. Let's talk about other stuff, right? So there are things that we are in touch and talking directly. Sometimes it takes time to play out. Binance is really professional, so I can say that they are really neutral when it comes to projects and all that. But when they see value, they will partner with projects.
Right. So what about ongoing support? Because that's the reason why I wanted to harp back on to this, because we look at the price, we see that overall things have been declining, not just Bend, but because you're still developing, your team is still working, I want to understand why, because in the long term, we want to see that price reflect your work. So
Sure.
is Binance helping you with long-term support?
That's why I said, right, in the long run, price will catch up to fundamental. If you see an undervalued asset in the stock market, then you should buy, and then eventually you will profit because it will go up, right, to the underlying value. But you may be wrong. Maybe you buy an overvalued asset and then eventually it go down, and then you will lose money, right, in the stock market. Again, it's the same thing, right? I mean, for me,
not financial advice, obviously, though, Soravis, but let's talk about, though, what Binance plan to do with you in the long term.
Right. So again, as an ecosystem player, they have access to a lot of projects. That's how we're able to strike some of these partnerships. They have one of the more sophisticated API. We are leveraging the data for the Oracle, right? Then we are leveraging the data for a lot of DeFi, and then we'll do more of that as well. So you will see more of that coming up for sure. Whether that be through us, through Binance, or through other partners, whatever. But there will be more. Again, Binance is really helpful when it comes to helping us to build, helping us to connect. Just like I said, Binance Super Meetup in Singapore was a really great event, right? A lot of the people attendees, a lot of high qualities actually attendees.
I see. Well, so obviously it's been quite a profound partnership agreement between you two. What about in the US? Are you also looking at aligning with any of the major VCs or more importantly, the major exchanges there? If we look at the likes of Coinbase, for example, because I'm starting to see, especially now, a bit of a dichotomy emerge between some of this, the interest in the US and some of the interest in Asia.
I can tell you we're working on that. I mean, on the major changes, we are working on that. I would also say that a lot of the token projects, including us, are cautious about US. Again, because of the SEC, none of us like in the jail. Though all of us would like to be careful on that, and be careful when it comes to the US jurisdiction. Right now, most of us, most of the token projects are trying to avoid that actually.
Okay, well, I really appreciate that transparency because once again, they're still trying to work out a regulatory framework over there. Investors
want some of the team members to get in trouble with the SEC, just like Kick, just like those tokens that got fined by the SEC, right? You don't want that to happen.
No, of course not. You want to wait and make sure that you get it right.
You want to play by the rule, and playing by the rule takes time.
Exactly, mate. Now, perfect segue into Sequoia, because as you know, their name carries immense weight when it comes to venture capital. But your agreement or the support you've garnered from Sequoia is a little different because there's an arm of Sequoia. So can you just clarify for us which of the Sequoia sort of backers, supported you? Was it the India?
Sequoia India.
Yes.
But they are quite global. So I mean.
Yeah, but can you just talk to us a bit about the difference? Because not every VC has different arms in different regions, and we've seen the likes even of Corby, for example.
It's just really different management team, and it's just essentially like you think of it as a branch company in 3 different regions, handle 3 different I guess organization in different geographies.
Okay.
So I wouldn't really differentiate them. I would just say they are Sequoia. It's just that because they segment that, they are able to keep more focus into each of the segment. Right?
Okay. So have you had any correspondence with the US of Sequoia as well?
Yeah. So I mean, if we need help, we need some connection. They are really really helpful. So one example, really easy. So after today, I'm flying to Singapore, going to meet with another C-level executive of traditional enterprises, and this is through Sequoia connections in order to talk about BAM protocol, talk about smart contract, talk about the use cases within the organization. So we'll be meeting with a lot of this.
Right. Well, that's good to know, because I think a lot of people were confused about that before, and you've made it very clear. Sequoia is Sequoia, full stop. And that's a big deal, Soravis, because they don't invest in things typically that aren't where they vetted it thoroughly, and they've invested for the very long term. So they must be very bullish on you to put that money down, expecting your technology to build for many years.
Right. And that's the key. I think, as you mentioned, will take many years, right? It's a long time frame investment. Of course, when they invest, they don't look at 8 years, 10 years investment time frame, right? They look at it as a 6-month time frame or a 2-month time frame. Then most people say, hey, what's your price check in 2 months, right? And like, hey, we are set up, and look, we don't control price. And the nature of this is we do not manipulate price, right? So I mean, it's as clear as that. So again, it's a long term.
Got it. Now, what about the road in terms of MainNet? Trajectory, the plan in terms of really showcasing and activating the technology. Literally for a live exchange scenario.
We have everything up and running, working on Ethereum. We are, like I said, report to many other chains as well. The main deal is in Q3 next year. Well, we're gonna likely migrate to our own chain. There will be more detail regarding that soon. But yeah, that's a long-term plan where we're gonna make sure everything is fully cross-chain compatible, able to port our data to any chain. So then whether you be developers, enterprises, you can pick and choose whichever you want.
Well, that's going to be exciting, and that's going to obviously really change the game for the kind of degree of interaction and transfer of value because of the cross-chain element. And no doubt that would increase your utility substantially, because you'll also have that support directly from those chains. Now, one of the things I did want to ask you a bit more about was your team. Has the team expanded since we last talked?
Yes, so we do hire more developers, more business BD essentially, to do more integration. We've been careful and slow in terms of hiring, that's for sure, because we want to make sure we really have high quality people on our team. So, yeah.
Okay, and what about revenue? How are you going? I mean, obviously it's very early days. I think it's
early days. We don't focus on that much right now. I mean, the revenue is basically QE fee, right? And people QE the Oracle. We are working on that in the long term. We're not too concerned. I mean, for us right now, last month we see about 2,000, 3,000 QE, which is quite sizable, given the current state of the industry, given the current affair that we are 2 months old.
But it's a good sign that those numbers are there, and most importantly is you're relying on that the investment funds to sustain this period of time when you do need to knuckle down and build the tech. So I totally appreciate that. Exchanges, as we mentioned at length, Binance is a very prominent exchange for you, but you also have Galaxy and you have Dcoin as well. What's the plan in the future to also increase liquidity to make sure that it's just a wider net?
So again, we are working with other major exchanges. Things take time. Again, business deals take time. Sometimes it doesn't make sense economically for us. Sometimes or sometimes there are regulatory issues. So for example, you want to get listed in, I don't know, let's say country X, you may need to get an approval from country X in order to be there, right? So things like that. It's something that we're working right now. It will take some time, but yeah, it will be there at the right time. I will say that. Yeah.
Got it. Now, are you also planning on working with any advisory bodies or consultants who are experts in marketing? I only ask because whenever I've seen it, really strong crypto-based parties who have all this experience and all of these networks align with someone like you, the performance of the token obviously does well, but more importantly is that network really introduces the team to a greater understanding of crypto dynamics. So are you considering working with more legitimate, if they indeed exist?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have been working with some marketing agencies globally to some obviously PR or some of the Chinese agencies to help us with the local media, local translation and all that. So yeah, we have been doing that. We're looking to find, like you said, legitimate one. A lot of people will claim what they can do, and you know, it's just the nature of that.
Got it. Well, good luck finding the legitimate ones, because they're few and far between in this space. But hopefully, you know, they exist and they are doing some real long-term work with you. Going back to that bonding curve, just really quickly, the data set token, the modeling that you've done with the multi-coin approach, really fascinating. And especially that burn, you know, long-term, surely that should really help the value, because once again, you're focused on the staking, you're focused on reducing that supply as well.
Right. So I mean, again, it's actually quite a success on our end. You know, when we launched the bonding curve with the financial data set tokens, we see almost 10% of the circulating supply being locked up, right, in the bonding curve itself, which is quite significant. We also see significant increase in the XFN tokens as well. Right? It went up almost 300% at some point in time, right? So actually quite a sizable number. And we see use cases like that, people actually staking, people actually earning the QE fee, which is, again, really important metric for us, most important actually, to do that and drive that part. We are continuing to do more. We are optimizing for some of the user experience, releasing more tool. Yeah, that's coming up.
I see. I think we just lost you for a moment there. But, you know, obviously there's a lot to come for you, Soravis. And just to finish off the interview, because I know it's been a bit of a rehash to try and really showcase that you're really building for a long-term future. Reliable data curation, it's a genuine need, no question. We need that interim, that conduit, that modem that you are, to enable the translation of modern, contemporary, mainstream data and convert that into smart contracts so that things can be utilized for a new financial paradigm, and also for an asset paradigm as well. So is there anything you wanted to say in any way to address to the community exactly what you're really trying to achieve, what you really stand for as you move forward?
Right, sure. So again, if I talk about this, then I think the question is, we will see ourselves 4 to 5, right? Or 10 years ago, right? Again, for blockchain industry, smart contract to get adoptions, we need to get the oracle right. We need to get this service right, and how to connect real world informations, into the smart contract, and get the information from the smart contract out to the real world, right? The bridge between these are really important. I would almost go as far as to say it's almost as important as a layer 1 solutions, because without it, this layer 1 solution, no matter how fast, will not get to any real world meaningful use cases. Right? Think of it as Oracle will enable a really powerful smart contract, and we are really excited about that in the next 5 years to bring that to the real world, to make sure there are real use cases and adoption of this smart contract, right? And blockchain technologies will be the enabler of that, right? And that's really important, and that's how we see ourselves in the next 4 to 5 years. We'll go as big as that, and provide a service that every blockchain will need to use for a service where all these enterprises we need to leverage.
Got it, mate. So essentially, you're that fundamental oxygen for the smart contract. You bring them to life, and also you make sure that the data has relevance beyond measure. Right now, it's stifled by the lack of enough Oracle technology. You're leading the way. Others are in the mix, as we know. You're certainly getting support from some big names. Asia seems to be the domain of the day right now, and the focus of your current team and building in that region. But no doubt you want to move globally as well. So it's going to be interesting to see you evolve, and most importantly, to really watch for that product growth, to really prove that the applications can exist, and most importantly, there's significant number of users, a strong user base attached to those applications. So a lot of opportunism, I would imagine, is part and parcel with what you're building, and you're looking forward to the future of your company or of your startup.
For sure, I'm looking forward to speaking to you in 1 year time when we catch up. We catch up again, and obviously more before that. But when we catch up 1 or 2 years from now, I'll be really excited to talk more.
Likewise, mate, and keep going with that. That technology, the open source nature of your tech. GitHub is there. Things are very transparent. If you'd like to know more, it'll all be obviously in description below for the links for BAM protocol. And Soravis, as the CEO, thank you very much for your time today. It was entirely free. Hopefully those who have listened have had a chance to have a bit more of an insight into what you're really doing at the grassroots, what you're trying to achieve as you move forward as a team to transform the space and bring all oracles right up in the mix when it comes to need, like you said, to enable this whole ecosystem everyone's trying to work with come to life.
Yeah. Thank you, Brad, for doing this for the industry. I think it's really helpful, and it's also add all this legitimacy. So thank you very much as well. I'm looking forward to it again.
Anytime, you're always welcome. You know that. Okay, take care.